We have two great guests today, let me tell you. We have Dr. Estela Valles. She has a doctorate in, I'm going to have to read this, teaching, learning and culture, and biliteracy. So she's obviously a lot brighter than I am. And we have Armin Jezari. Is it Jezari or Jezari?
Jezari.
Jezari, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Who is a local attorney. And they are both members of the Baha'i Faith. And I did some research into this and found it absolutely fascinating. And the philosophy behind it. Another thing I found absolutely fascinating about this is it is a recent religion. I knew about Baha'is, and we'll get into why I knew about them in a bit, but I thought it was an ancient religion. It really came about, I think it was 1844.
Exactly.
So it's a very recent religion, and the things they have to say about it and the things they explain about it, I think will fascinate you the way it fascinated me. And like all of these programs, and like I said in the introduction, be curious and learning about other religions, other faiths, other people. It gets rid of the fear and it helps us live together. So I want to start with the basic tenets of the Baha'i Faith. As we talked about before this is more of a program about the cultural aspects of your religion, how it fits in the community, but we can't have that discussion unless we know about the basic tenets. So women before men, I'm going to start with Dr. Valles, would you?
So there's several components to it, but three of the major ones is the belief in a God, the oneness of God for all peoples. A second one, and please, Armin, jump in if you feel necessary. A second one is the unity of humanity. Only one race. We might be different races, but our ultimate race is humanity. We're all humans. The third one is going to be basically the oneness of religions. All religions in particular that are considered both in the West and the East important to our progression as a species. Those are three of the most basic tenets to our faith, but there's more, and I'll let Armin take over from here.
And let me say something before Armin goes, is I will come back to this also. Armin was actually born a Baha'i. Yeah. You, Estela, I'm going to call you Estela, not Dr. Valles.
Please do, yes.
You were actually born a Catholic, I think.
That is correct. A Roman Catholic, traditional Roman Catholic.
But converted to, is it Baha'ism or the Baha'i Faith?
To the Baha'i Faith,
okay.
Yes.
All right, so Armin, continue with what Estela was talking about.
Well,
with the
Estela's
tenets.
story is much more interesting about becoming a Baha'i than being born
We'll
into
get back
Baha'i.
to that, but you're pretty interesting too.
But Estela nailed it with the three onenesses and the idea of progressive revelation, that all religions are like chapters in a book and they're essentially connected and they come from the same source. But those are our eternal verities, if you will, that you maybe find in most religions. But our social teachings or social tenets are the equality of men and women, the elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, the elimination of all forms of prejudice, world peace upheld by a global federation of nations, a commonwealth of nations. And so we strive to put into practice those teachings.
I don't think there's anything you said that could be disagreed with, to tell you the truth.
An attempt to eliminate poverty.
Which...
Yeah, a grand, more than a lifetime endeavor for sure.
Yeah.
But something always on the radar, always on the radar.
So I want to get back, and the tenets will keep coming in as we talk, but you're born a Baha'i, started in Persia, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, which is now Iran.
Yes.
Were your parents born there or here?
My parents were born in Iran as well. We immigrated here to the U.S. in '79 because of the Islamic Revolution. Right. I was an infant. And the reason for that is because Baha'is suffer tremendous persecution in the Middle East. And so we had to abandon our culture and immigrate to the U.S. And thankfully, the U.S. provides sanctuary for persecuted peoples.
And where did your family go?
We came to Dallas, actually.
Was there a Baha'i community in Dallas that you could immediately enter?
There was. The Baha'i Faith, as you mentioned, was born in 1844, but really it's a global religion, so you'd find Baha'i communities throughout the world. And although maybe nascent or small in size, when we immigrated, there was a Baha'i community in Dallas that we were able to be part of.
Now, I think the Baha'i community here is small at this point. Is that right?
It is.
I think you said about 120 people.
Correct.
But 120 people putting out this philosophy can be a very strong movement, I think. You mentioned, I think we were talking right before we started taping, you just bought a community center. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we're so excited. We're updating it, making it equitable in every way possible, and at the same time, we are planning to do a grand opening and invite community members to visit our center. We have a beautiful garden. It's substantial in size. I think we used to have a Baha'i center in Northeast El Paso. This one's a little bit different, and we're so excited because we will start to open up and teach and share and so forth. We're not trying to recruit potential Baha'is. That's not what we do. Basically, we're trying to basically focus on our humanity, our oneness, and trying to improve our experiences as a species.
And I like when you said we're not trying to recruit potential Baha'is, and because that's not what this program is about. This program is about our viewers having curiosities about different religions, different ethnicities, different races, and growing from that. And I think you had said one of the philosophies of Baha'i, or maybe you did, Estela, I'm sorry, is one great big family.
Yes.
We're all humans.
Yes.
And who in good faith could argue with anything like that?
Yes.
Is the Baha'i community here, well, I mean, when you say you're going to open up the community center, would you have like people coming to eat Persian food?
Yes.
Because I want to do that.
We'll have teas.
I want to be part
we'll
of
have
that.
Luncheons. We'll have children's classes. We'll have an attempt to reconnect with the community in the way we used to when we had our Baha'i Center open in Northeast El Paso. But Bob, going back to what you said, we believe in the unity of our humanity as a species, but we also emphasize the diversity of the races and understand that they should be recognized and respected as they are. We don't try to change or Americanize or anything like that. In fact, when you go to National or even to Haifa in Israel, which is the Universal House of Justice, you're encouraged to wear the clothes of your ethnicity or your race. For example, I could go there and I could wear, well, just about several things because I'm mixed.
Yeah.
But I would, be very comfortable in doing so.
Have you been there?
I have been, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to be going in November of this year on a 9-day pilgrimage to the Holy Land.
How nice.
Yes.
When are you going?
In November.
Hopefully it'll be peaceful when you go.
Well, North Israel is a little bit more peaceful
right.
than the South, but
you never know in that part of the world.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to both of you. So I've been to, I'm Jewish. Mm-hmm. I've been to Haifa. I've been to the Baha'i shrine there. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. Plus, I've been to the Baha'i temple, which is up in Evanston, which is also beautiful. And and they're very, if I remember correctly, lots of rounded sorts of
rotundas.
Yeah, not a lot of flat, square spaces. It's very, to me, it was very flowing. How many Baha'i are in the country? Do you know?
I'd say there's a few 100,000 in the United States and about 7 million worldwide.
That's pretty big.
A little smaller than the Jewish population worldwide.
So we share that anyway.
We do share that.
Yeah.
We share a lot.
And what about Dallas, the community you came from?
I would say in El Paso, as you mentioned, we have about 100 people on the rolls. Maybe we see 40 or 50 regularly. In Dallas, because it's a larger metropolitan city, you might have 400 or 500. But then there are smaller cities like Frisco and Plano and Richardson, which have their own communities as well.
And what about on campuses? Do you do anything on campuses? Are you
We
involved?
used to. We used to have at UTEP a class on the Baha'i Faith.
Really?
Yes, and it was quite successful. The Baha'i friend who was teaching it, she's no longer part of the community. She moved outside, and it was, I think, a interesting experience from what she shared with me. She actually shared a story that I thought was very powerful. Her name was Susan, and she basically shared how she was talking to her students in the class and discussing the equality of man and woman. And one of her students actually said, "That's not the way it should be." And when Susan said that, I said, "Well, Susan," I said, "I mean, this is a college classroom, and one of your students has the gall to say something like that in front of females who are in the class as well." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "What'd you say, Susan?" And she says, "Well, you can't say anything. They don't understand yet." And so that reflects the need for us to connect with the community in ways that we used to do and haven't done recently. So we're hoping that once again we can teach at least at the college level, because you can't teach it at the public school level, but to understand that the faith is more than just a religion. It is a way of life in which you actually acknowledge that, yes, he and I are the same in terms of our importance. And as we shared with you, Bob, previously, if we are in a community in which resources are limited, it is encouraged that I go to school instead of him in the family, the Baha'i family, because I'm going to be potentially a mother, and then I will teach my children, and they will teach their children, and so forth. But that's different. I mean, when have you heard of a religion actually doing that? I don't know of any, quite frankly.
There is a big emphasis in the Baha'i Faith on the advancement of women. As a matter of fact, the Baha'i international community, it's really one of the few, if not the only, faith-based organizations that has consultative status with the United Nations social and economic development committees. And so the Baha'is are very actively involved with the UN in terms of advancement of women, what Estela talked about, the empowerment of minority societies, the elimination of poverty, and so forth. But when I was younger, when I was in college, I was a member of a Baha'i club, just like you have different clubs on college campuses. But here in Dallas, at the University of Texas, UTD, where I went, they have a Baha'i club right now because they have a lot of young people that, have panel discussions or interfaith discussions, or, bring people together just to socialize and get to know, break down barriers. What better way to break down barriers than to get to know one another? But here in El Paso, all our Baha'is have moved out. El Paso is a big transition city. People come here, because of the military or because of the residency programs, and they're here for a few years and they move. So our Baha'i community here tends to expand and contract because of that.
In fact, we had a Baha'i club at UTEP when we had youth here. But it's a phenomenon that it's not just Baha'is, but our youth, once they get educated, higher degrees, they leave El Paso. Everybody knows that. And so as you shared with us, even in the Jewish community, that's an issue.
And today there is a lot of non-affiliated people with anything. How did the Baha'is start out here? I think you had mentioned, I can't remember the family name.
Well, the Haydarian family, we have a large Baha'i community, a Persian Baha'i community that's been here. But the Baha'i as a non-profit was incorporated in the 50s, and when 9 members reside in a locality, the Baha'i communities or the Baha'i writings say you should have an election to elect a spiritual assembly for that community.
When there are 9 people?
When there are 9 people. So when the first 9 Baha'i, which were Anglos, essentially. Here in El Paso. And some Hispanics, I think 1 or 2 Hispanics, but primarily Anglos. When they were elected to that first spiritual assembly, we have the Articles of Incorporation that were filed with the Secretary of State back in the 50s and 60s. And you had those 9 members that were first, our pioneers, if you will, to El Paso.
In fact, we have their documentation. We've stored it for several years now, keeping keep it in a safe place because we didn't have a place. Even if now that we have the center, we decided that we're going to still keep it where we can preserve the docks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But we have documentation, a history that needs to be published. We've talked about doing that, but we just haven't had the time and so forth to publish a book specifically about El Paso Baha'is and the history. And
I think it'd be fascinating.
Wouldn't that be fascinating?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so what was the name of the family again?
The Haydarian family is a Persian family here, and so a lot of doctors and professionals and entrepreneurs that are active with the community as professionals.
It's funny, you could never make an assumption. Like if I heard the name Haydarian, I would assume Armenian rather than Persian. Because a lot of Armenian names end in IAN.
Well, the Persian Empire in the 19th century really did span through that part of the globe. And so it's shrunk down, and now Iran is, a smaller geographic body of land. But there was a time where the Persian Empire did spread all the way to Egypt.
Do you still have family in Iran?
No, most of my family has, as a matter of fact, all of my family has immigrated out of Iran, but there are still Baha'is in Iran that suffer persecution.
Yeah.
Well, Estela, you have or have not been to the shrine?
I have
in
not
Haifa?
been. No, I have not.
Okay.
I had planned on it, and things fell apart, and travel plans, and haven't gone. It's a dream. It'll happen, but in its
sure
time.
It'll happen.
In its own time.
Well, listen, my wife and I spent a lot of time in Chicago, so if you want to go just to the temple, come up there when we're up there, and we'll all go over there.
Well, you've been to that temple.
Nice. Yeah.
Go over there. You've been there.
Oh, yeah. And it was fantastic the first time I went because we actually were visiting with the friends, and the place was by itself. It was no one was there, and there was this young woman, and I don't know why. Do you remember, Armin, why she started to sing? But she started to sing, and it was the acoustics in the building are fantastic, and it was like angels singing.
Wow!
It was beautiful. Do you remember that?
It could have been a devotional. I don't.
She was by herself, and it was just astounding to me, and we got to hear that.
Well, the grounds are beautiful. I mean, and people. I don't think people realize. In both Haifa and Evanston, we may have beautiful cathedrals here, but it's the building itself, whereas at least my experience with the shrine and the temple, it's the building, but it's the grounds around them.
Yes.
I mean, in Haifa, it's up on the hill, and you're looking out over the sea, and it's just...
Well, the idea of nature is very important to Baha'is. So we want to, we have a material civilization, but at the same time, to protect nature or beautify nature. So this idea of gardens or to have architecture that somehow flows into nature to protect our natural habitat is really, I wouldn't say it's a central tenet to the faith, but it's very central to our practice and belief system.
Yes. And in fact, at the national level, and probably even at the international level, we're starting to focus as communities on global warming and climate change.
Really?
Which is extraordinary for a religion.
A religion, absolutely.
And I'm so happy because we get information from national, and they get it from international as well. And we get them via mail and a booklet, a magazine, and basically also letters.
In your you must have some archives here, correct?
Yes,
we do.
So in your archives, do you have pictures of the temples or the temple or the shrine or anything like that?
Yes, and a lot of that is publicly available. If you just Google Baha'i Faith Israel or Baha'i Faith, Illinois, you'll get pictures of those.
Okay, so anybody who's listening, you should go online and look these buildings up and the grounds around them, because they are absolutely breathtaking. I mean, they're really fantastic. Okay, I have a lot of other questions I want to go through. So, and I think you would talk to me about this. I want to talk about this 19-day feast. And actually, in my notes, I wrote down 19-day fast. I thought, no, that can't be right. I'm missing a vowel
We
there.
do a 19-day fast too, actually, so you're not that off.
Do you really?
We do.
I want to hear about the holidays that you have.
So the holidays are basically based on the Persian, the Baha'i calendar, and the faiths, the concepts of our faith, which we use Persian or Arabic words to every month. Of the 19 feasts, there's each one of them is a special month with a special attribute attached to it. So that is the focus for that month.
So is it the 19th day of the month? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, the Baha'i Faith has its own calendar.
Okay.
So the first day of the Baha'i month may fall on some random Gregorian day, but the Baha'i Faith has its own calendar. So it's the first day of the Baha'i month that we celebrate our 19-day feast.
Okay. So I just want to be clear. It's the first day of the Baha'i month that you celebrate the 19-day feast.
Correct. And each Baha'i month has 19 days, and we have 19 months.
Okay.
And then we have an intercalary period that is designed to sync the calendar together, which is 3 or 4 days depending on leap year.
You're going to have to explain that word, intercalary, because I surely do not know what that means.
Days outside of time, if you will,
Kind of like a leap year.
Yeah, like
Got
days
it.
that are
you could have said leap year.
Days that sync the calendar.
Okay.
So.
All right. So I know we have that, but what day? So Jewish.
Yeah.
Our Sabbath, Friday sundown, Saturday sundown. Do you have just the first day of the Baha'i month is a worship day, or do you worship additionally during the month?
Well, we do have holidays, kind of similar to what you're talking about, where we're not supposed to work. Now, it's a little bit different because we're here in the West now, the faith is here in the West, and we work a lot as Americans in particular. But if you can, now here's the thing, if you can, then you honor them. But the recognition is that we're in a different place now, and so we basically leave it up to ourselves, just like the fast. We also do fast, and that is to help us better align ourselves to God. Fasting is good for the body, or so that's what some of the medical journals would say. But again, if you can do it, then you are encouraged to do it. But we don't force anybody. We don't say, "Oh, yeah, this is fast period. You should not." But our fasting is something that the more traditional Baha'is practice more abundantly than perhaps like someone like myself. I don't fast all the time, and I should, but I have reasons for not doing so. If you have medical conditions and that sort of thing, then you're not required to do so.
Okay, but I think I understand what you're telling me, but I don't know that I'm asking the right question. So the first day of the Baha'i month is the 19-day feast. And you all get together and you do, like you said, the spiritual, the administrative, the food. Is there another specific holiday during that month that you get together? Or is it really like you do it on the first day of the Baha'i month and then the first day of the next Baha'i month, and that's how you get together as a community?
So I understand where you're coming from, because on Sundays people go to worship at church.
Exactly.
And so the question is, do you worship on Sundays? And the answer is, the 19-day feast is when the community comes together for our spiritual, administrative, and social portions. We don't have any clergy in the Baha'i Faith, so it's a community-driven organization that elects its officers or its spiritual assemblies to guide it. And so I think what Estela was saying is we have these holidays or holy days that celebrate the central figures of the faith, whether it's their births or their passing, and then on those days, if you can suspend work, and we have
I should have been clearer.
Yeah, we have a celebration that we.
I should have been smarter. No, you should have been clear.
You're pretty smart.
No.
So those are our holy days, and so
we have 9 of those throughout the year. We have 19-day feasts, but then we have other activities that bring community members together. We might have a devotional program. Right now we're doing them on Zoom every Saturday, where we get together and read some Baha'i writings and say some prayers, or we may have, a luncheon, or we may have some activity with just like a social gathering or something like that. So
what about we were talking about it's lay-led, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So right now here in town, if somebody who makes the decisions for what you want to do? Like you want to have an open house at the new center. Who makes that decision?
The community, but led by the spiritual assembly. And we do it via consultation.
And who is the spiritual assembly? How many people are on the
9.
There, that is, now we're talking about in Haifa.
So international, 9 assembly members. National, 9 assembly members. Locally, 9 assembly members.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is 9 a special number for Baha'is?
It is.
And what is it?
It has some numerical value that represents unity. It's a spiritual number.
Oh,
but
I like how that all fits together with the unity.
And you'll notice that at the Baha'i temples around the world, or Baha'i houses of worships, they all have 9 sides.
I didn't realize
And
that.
it's almost representative of the unity of religion, saying that, the religions are all united, so everyone's welcome into the Baha'i temples. There's no exclusivity, if you will, to entering the Baha'i temple. Anyone is welcome.
Let's talk about the 9 people. What's that called? The
Assembly
of
members.
Justice.
Oh, the Universal House
okay.
of Justice.
Yeah, that's international.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about now. I'm over in Haifa.
Okay.
Are there men and women?
Yes, all the spiritual assemblies locally and nationally have, there's men and women on the spiritual assemblies.
But and that's the same internationally or not?
The Universal House of Justice has an exemption. The 9 people that serve on the Universal House of Justice, women are exempt from serving on the House of Justice.
Huh.
So they're because Baha'is consider service on these institutions as a duty, and so women are exempt from service on the House of Justice.
All right. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
I think.
Yeah. But we have to take it into the context of politics.
Right.
Imagine being at the international level, just how difficult it is, even with the Americans in the United States trying to get female representatives to deal with countries that are extremely patriarchal.
Right, yeah.
We recognize that. And it is, for the time, that is the way it is. But it could change. All things can change in the faith because we still have writings that need to be translated and shared with the community. By that I mean spiritual writings inspired by our manifestations of God, our prophets, our leaders of our faith. So for people who believe in equity and it should be at all levels, our faith at that level recognizes that it could potentially be a danger for women
to do
at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see that assassinations of females, and when government attacks, who do they attack first? If there's a male and a female, they're going to go after the female. We're seeing that in the U.S.
That's a very important point Estela makes, insofar as the Baha'i faith is just a link in a chain. And so as humanity progresses and advances, we believe there will be more prophets and manifestations to bring greater truth. So we look at religion as evolutionary.
Right.
So we don't presume to be the last, and we believe there will be more and give greater knowledge to humanity as we develop.
We recognize the need for our continued progression in terms of our faith as a species, as well as the preservation of our planet and so forth.
I think faith is such an interesting and strong concept. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up right now. I apologize. There's so much more I would like to hear from you. So I intend on asking you guys to come back. And I hope you will.
Thank you for having us.
And we're going to invite you to the events that we will have coming up recently.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us.